Hey, Justin Dyson here, Dyson Apiaries, out here on February 28th. Been doing some work in some of my bees, so we're gonna talk about kind of what I'm gonna call airing them out a little bit, some of our stronger colonies. So stick right with us. And so what we're going to be doing today is what I'm going to call airing out the colony, or opening up the brood nest, or making sure that queen has room to lay. And the colonies I'm going to focus on today are these that I have labeled with a B3, and I want to explain that a little bit. Back in January, I put pollen substitute patties on all these colonies, and when I did that, I made sure that I labeled the colony for the bee numbers, and I labeled the colony for how much honey they had. And it's pretty simple. I put a B, and then I put a 1, 2, or 3. 1 being I got a really small cluster, iffy, probably needs some help. 2 is going to be fine. 3 is really strong. And then an H for honey, you know, if the colony is really light, I put a 1. If they're heavy, I put a 3. And so I'm going back to these colonies today that I labeled B3. That means they're strong. And what I need to do is I need to stall a little while. We'll be starting up queen mating nukes here in another week, but I'm not ready to break out nukes. I'm not ready to do splits yet. I don't have queens available, and I need to stall. But in stalling, I need to make sure that this hive is just producing all the bees it can produce. I want that queen laying at maximum capacity, so we're going to open that up. We may have a little foundation over on the side. We may have we have that feeder in the way. If they got plenty of honey, we can get that feeder out of there. And maybe they're just chock full of honey in the middle, and the queen can't even really move up. And so we're going to open that up. I want you to keep in mind that it's February 28th. This weekend it's going to be in the 20s. We can't go crazy with this. We still have cold weather through March. And so we just want to be kind of careful about the way we do it, but we do want to make sure that we give room for that queen to keep producing for another 2 to 3 weeks before we're ready to start doing other actions. And so we're going to jump in here to this colony and see what we find. And it's about 60, 62 out here today. We could do this down to, I wouldn't do it much below 50, but you know, we do have to get in here and do some work here to make sure that these colonies keep producing. And I know that this colony had plenty of honey, so just by the way I labeled it, and I can already see down the tops of these frames that there's a lot of capped honey and such in here. I'm going to bring the camera a little closer. And so I'm going to start over here on the side. Like I said, sometimes I still have a little foundation that I didn't quite get drawn out in the fall when I was feeding. And if I had foundation, it would have typically moved it over here to the side if I didn't miss one. So right there, that frame is completely full of pollen and a little bit of honey. More honey here. And this hive is not busting at the seams, but I can guarantee you, based on the number of bees that are up here in the top, down there in the bottom, they have several frames of brood, and that's just going to explode here very soon. So we're still full of honey here, and this frame right here is capped. Got a little wind coming through. I hope that doesn't mess us up, but since this is still capped, I'm going to put this over on the side. Alright, so we do have a few eggs up here. The queen has moved up some, so that's good. She just started. I'm going to make sure we don't mash a queen as we're working. That frame's just barely drawn out. I'm actually going to set it to the side for just a minute. is what we have here is we have a frame right here that's just swelled out real big. And here the queen is laid fresh. There's just eggs in here right now in that little space. But they don't have a ton of room. Bees don't like this wind. A little bit chilly. So there we have a little sealed brood and some eggs around that perimeter. And see, there's a frame of foundation. Now, since it already has brood in it, I'm going to leave it in here. And I'm going to make sure. Now, it's important when you're doing this, pay attention where these frames are at. And so we don't want to take a brood frame and stick it against the outside wall. We want to see where their nest is at. Is it over here? Is it here? Is it over here? And we want to generally keep that in the same spot. If we go to moving it around, we're going to mess up their cluster. I'm going to go ahead and get this feeder out of here because we're going to replace that with some frames. And so as I was talking about, I use this 2-frame division board feeder. Another frame right there of some brood. And so they were trying to be from here to here. There was a lot of honey in the way here. And so we're going to try to fix that. And one of the ways I'm going to fix that, I know that I can go to right here with brood, and I've got one frame down there that had a few eggs in it. We don't want to leave that sitting out long, but I'm going to grab a couple frames. These were frames from a dead out. You see there's a couple dead bees in there. We'd want to get as much as we could out, but we're not going to be able to get those out of the cells. I know that the hive wasn't diseased with something crazy, so I'm good with reusing these. And that's a nicely drawn out brood frame. We're going to slide that in right there. Another one freshly drawn out last year. I'm going to put that there. And I can look down in this hive. I'll try to show you. And you see there's a good number of bees all the way over in the bottom. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to find this frame down here that had a few eggs in it. It was this one right here, had a few eggs. So I'm going to slide that one back in there. These other 2 frames that I pulled out had nothing but honey and pollen, and so I'm going to slide those back in here, and they're working on drawing that out. They'll finish it, so I'm going to slide that one back in. And then we have this frame. Get a few of those bees off of there so I don't mash a bunch. And so if we look back, I added these 2 frames right here, opened up their brood nest there to give that queen a place to come up and lay, and we already had some brood here. And so that's going to encourage that queen to continue to lay and lay strong for us, to produce more and more bees for us. So I have this colony right here labeled B3 and H2. I'm going to run through it really quick. I'm just going to kind of keep rolling here. We'll do one more colony together. So you can kind of see that they don't always look the same, so we got to make judgment calls as we go. Lots of bees, as you saw. I'm going to go ahead and just get this feeder out of the way because I know I'm going to add some frames. That'll give us some space to work. Actually going to set that in the front. Well, that was a little testy. nice pretty frame of honey. Just gonna go ahead and slide that over. These bees are plenty strong enough to get there, and now we have some brood. We want to make sure that we don't completely separate them from their honey as we're working. But that frame, I should have showed you, it has honey right around the brood. So even if we slide a big frame of honey over to the side, they still have access to honey right here, even if they're clustered. Now I'm going to remember that was in the 7th position from over, so I can kind of remember that. That was the first brood. More cap brood, and they're cranking down at the bottom too, just so you know. Got that one laid full. Kind of pay attention when you're working the top box without taking the bottom one, without taking it off the bottom. You want to kind of glance as you're putting these frames back in to make sure there's not a queen like right here on one of these bird combs, because if there is, you got a mess. You're gonna squish her. And so here we have just a little bit of empty comb there and honey. So that's probably the extent of the brood. I'm gonna flip over here and just check. Yep, so we have more honey. Let's see if the honey runs all the way to the edge. Because we may have an empty frame in here. That one's full. The bees have made some honey in the past couple of days off the red maples. They picked up a little bit of weight. So right here we have an empty frame in this hive already. So I'm going to use that one first. And I'm going to slide those honey frames over. I had this one had honey in it. Now I'm going to put this empty frame in here. And we'll slide this brood, those 3 frames of brood, back to there. And remember, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That frame is still in the same spot. Now they have an empty frame right beside their brood, and I'm going to put 2 more empties right here. They have direct access to honey right here on this side and above the brood. So we're not messing them up, but we're going to give them 2 extra frames right here, and we put that empty frame right there. That's going to allow them to expand that brood really easy. Here we go. 2 pretty frames. I like to trade out my comb pretty regular if I can. Bees are exposed to a lot of junk these days, so you get a lot of it cycled just by selling nukes, and you know, so a lot of the nukes are getting 2 or 3 frames that are maybe three years old or so. They're not terribly old. I usually try to throw in a newer frame in there too. But that's that. We've successfully opened the brood nest. And we could do the same thing in the bottom if we wanted to. Another little tidbit that I should have thrown in earlier today, I was working in the colony in another apiary, and the entire 8 frames in the top box are completely chock full of honey. And you know, I overfed them a little last year, you know, and they were conservative with the resources over the winter, whatever it was. But if we're in that situation, adding those two empty frames is really not enough if they're a really strong colony, because we need more space to let that queen rock and roll. And so what I did on that one is, they had 8 full frames of honey, full and capped. I took 2 frames full and capped out of that colony. I left the bees there, and then I put those in a colony that was a little bit lighter on honey. And then I put 4, because I took the 2 frame feeder out, I took 2 frames of honey, and so I put 4 empty frames right center in the top and put those honey frames on the side. There was no brood in the top. But if I come back in a week and check that colony, I bet those 4 frames will just be laid solid. And so that's just one other little thing you might run into, in a way you can deal with it. So real quick here, in this colony right here, what I took the feeder out, and then I had a frame of honey, and then 2 frames of brood, and then I found this. And that's where I goofed. back in the fall. I goofed. I left actually 2 frames of foundation right here, and what that did was that prevented that queen from coming here. And so I actually have some empty frames right here that I hardly have anything on it. The bees have used up the resources, but the queen doesn't want to come over there and lay. The bees are not coming over there to create a brood nest, you know, raise the temperature so the queen will come up and lay. And so that was a mistake in the fall. And so now we're going to fix it now. We're going to basically leave those 2 brood frames where they're at. The honey frames are over here and here, and we're going to slide some empties in around it, and that's going to encourage that queen to get the laying. Just another little tidbit: get any foundation, get it out of the middle. We're not worried about drawing comb right now. We're worried about making bees. That's what I want to do right now, is make bees, as many as I can make. So I got a few bees kind of testy now, so I'm gonna leave this veil on. But like I say, you can kind of do the same thing down at the bottom too. My back doesn't like me these days, so sometimes I'll do some of this work right up in the top right now, and then I'll save some of that bottom work for a little later as I start doing splits, and then I'll make sure that that bottom's got set up. Make sure that the bottom's set up with that, you know, 5-6 frames of brood, whatever we're shooting for, to set them up for the honey flow. But I'm not there yet. All I want to do is make sure that queen's got room to lay, they got access to honey, and they're not going to slow her down because there's not a place for her to lay. And so that's what I call airing out the brood nest. Hope this video was helpful for you. Something I do basically every year around this time. And again, today we're focusing on the strong colonies. We're going to give those weaker colonies another week or 2, and we'll probably start doing some of the same stuff to them, but I'm going to let them build just a little bit longer before we open them up. So anyway, thanks for watching. As always, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.